here with Chloe.
All right, so we're going to introduce the prong collar to Chloe today. A couple things for her in particular, where she has her long puppy doodle fur. You want to make sure that you're conditioning that fur really well. I really like this product. Actually, this isn't the exact product. This is like a dry shampoo deodorizer, but Scouts Honor sells a nice conditioner.
Show that to the camera.
Sorry. So any kind of that's just my favorite grooming products come from Scouts Honor. It's what I prefer to use, but any kind of conditioning spray is going to be really helpful because these her that type of puppy fur on Doodles, where she doesn't quite have her adult coat in until she gets a shave, that will definitely want to get hung up in these prongs. So that is going to be like a little bit of a downside to using this tool. However, I really think this tool is going to be super great. So we've already tried this out in her last training session and she did super great, very, very responsive to it. So essentially when we're looking at whether or not we want or need to use a prong, there's a couple of factors that we're talking about. So if it becomes an issue where the dog is potentially going to injure themselves because they're hitting the end of the leash so hard, that's when we're kind of potentially look at using something that's going to make the pressure a bit more acute. So prong collars, when used how we teach them, they should never injure or hurt the dog in any way, shape, or form. These are blunt-ended prongs, and even though I'll often say that it looks like a medieval torture device, it definitely isn't. So what this will do is obviously make the pressure more acute. Pressure on means you need to change or fix something. Pressure off means you're correct. She already has a great foundation in knowing where she should be at heel. She just hasn't had enough clear communication via the leash to have us, as the handler, have a great way to like reinforce that boundary and that space for her. So she tends to kind of be like a bee on a string when she's on her leash, and we're the owner, or you and us, we end up using like full body, shoulder, arm movement to kind of keep her under control. And she's hitting the end of that leash really hard on her neck. So this is really, really going to make that a much, much better situation. And it's going to make everything more clear. Everyone's going to have a much better time because you're going to be more relaxed and in control. And she's going to have a better understanding of what she needs to do in order to be correct. So a couple things about this prong in particular. I am fond of the Harmspringer brand, which is what we've got here. You can get those on Amazon. I also have put in a buckle on this prong, especially. It doesn't come with it, so I added this on, and this will just make getting it on and off much easier. So we just essentially clip it on and off just like a regular collar. Otherwise, you're left to you having to like pinch these prongs apart, which is really, really tough because this is a thinner gauge. I do prefer to use this thinner gauge. For me personally, the thinner the better. Thinner leashes, thinner prongs, that's going to make pressure more acute versus dispersing it and making it. So the more centralized we can make pressure, the more it makes sense to them. One last thing as far as how this operates, just like a martingale, there's two rings here. One is called the dead ring, and one has a swivel. So the ring with the swivel is going to be where we clip our leash. The ring that doesn't swivel, the dead ring, I like to use a little tiny carabiner. I like to clip that onto the dog's regular collar. I don't have any more little carabiners today, but once I reorder those, I'll just slap that on there for you the next time she's in, after those come in. But these prongs have the tendency to pop off very easily, especially with this buckle. This buckle will pretty much kind of come apart if too much pressure is applied. So that's kind of just like a safety feature, really. But if she rolls on the ground or rubs against a tree or something like that, these prongs have the tendency to come apart pretty easily. So we want that carabiner on her regular collar attached to this dead ring in case that happens, so that you don't have a loose dog. You still have that connection with her on the leash. All right, so as far as fitting this, I've already added the adequate amount of prongs here, and we really basically want it high and tight. That's essentially the golden rule. I prefer the prong to not have the ability to slide all the way around. We want those prongs resting gently on the skin, not pressing in, but just kind of resting so that it doesn't have a lot of ability to slide around. And when I put it on initially, I generally have the swivel or the leash attachment coming down from underneath the chin. So we're going to put this on. We're going to watch out for her ears. And again, we're going to kind of be mindful of her fur. Perfect. So it fits just like this. And if we had that carabiner, we would be clipping that to her martingale. And at some point, as she gets really good at using this, we'll be swapping between using the prong and the martingale if you want. A lot of people want to switch back, and their goal is to essentially walk their dog on a leash and collar. And then some people use prongs and find that it just really helps their dog navigate and make more sense of what leash pressure and tactile cues on the leash mean. So what we're going to do now that she's attached, she has a great clicker response. So she has a conditioned response to her clicker. We're going to use the clicker to pair with leash pressure. So we call this the yield to leash exercise, and we did this back in puppy. But now we're going to do it with the sensation of the prong. So we're going to kind of just walk around here. I might have to take her outside. There might not be enough distractions for her to want to like lunge out on the end of her leash. But essentially, as soon as leash pressure happens, like even right there, I'm going to use my clicker with it. So let's actually pause the video and take this outside. All right. So you'll notice her itching. That's definitely normal. It's kind of a weird because it's touching her in many, many places. It's very normal for them to kind of stop and scratch. I usually just kind of interrupt it a little bit so they get used to it. Let me just want to check the temperature of this asphalt real quick. It is kind of warm, so we're going to do this a little bit quickly. So I'm going to ask her to get into heel position. Good. And actually, I'm going to get my clicker ready so that anytime I feel that pressure or she's putting pressure on the leash, I'm going to pair that with her clicker. Let's go. So a little leash pressure, click, and I'm going to pair. Good girl. I'm going to just tell her good anytime so leash pressure right there. I'm going to use the clicker. Good. So the clicker is just helping her come back to me. Sometimes especially you can see she's hitting the end of it, and it doesn't occur to her to yield to that pressure. So the clicker is just going to help her get to that answer a little bit more quickly. Just want to make sure her little tootsies aren't burning on this asphalt. Good girl. I'm going to mark her anytime she's healing with me. Nice. Good girl. All right, little leash pressure, click. Good. I'm going to do some about turns. Nice. Good girl. She didn't hit the end of the leash. Perfect. She hit it there, and she kind of caught up. Good girl. Leash pressure here. Click. Good. So I'm basically at the point now where I really don't need to use my clicker. She's starting to yield on her own. Leash pressure here. Good. So, good. I can use essentially like fingertip pressure on the collar now versus having to use that full arm action. And so I really just want to make sure that when she's correct, she has a nice loose leash. I'm going to use leash pressure anytime she's not correct, which is anytime she's not in that heel position. Good girl. I'm going to use a little bit right here. Good. So I used a little bit of leash pressure right here where she was sniffing that paper clip on the ground, using some right there to get her back in. So we want her right here in this bubble, not behind me, not going out in front of me, not going here, there, and stopping and sniffing. So right here, good. So pressure should only be on anytime she's leaving that bubble. Right here, good. I'm gonna use a little bit right here, good. Good girl. Right here, good. So I'm gonna do a little figure 8 here. Very nice, good girl. We're gonna go this way. Good girl. Nice. This is looking very good. I'm gonna finish up our little figure 8. Good girl. Good girl. Good. Perfect. So that looks really good. I would say the next thing we need to do is work her at a distance from some heavy distractions like other dogs. So if you know where a dog park is, it would be good to kind of take her kind of, 50 yards or so away from that and work your way closer. My main concern is that I've seen her hit the end of her leash with her regular collar, with her regular collar really, really hard. and we definitely don't want her to do that in this prong. Inevitably, she's going to most likely, just because of her history with hitting the end of the leash so hard, I have a feeling it's going to happen at some point where she hits the end and she's going to potentially kind of feel pretty uncomfortable. I would just make sure you stay really neutral, like, oh, bummer that happened, buddy. Collect her, reconcile, give her a piece of food, say, hey, that's cool, just don't, and she's going to kind of self-learn. I would avoid situations, I'm going to pick you up just in case that asphalt's hot, huh, buddy? But avoid situations where she would potentially be like lunging at the end of the leash for like the first, few sessions that she's on the prong. So working around people, working around dogs at a distance, and working up to getting closer so that she's just not slamming into the end of her leash. So make sure you have your clicker and your food ready. That looks good. She's doing great. Good job, Chloe.